Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Blue Abroad YouTube channel with another episode of The Rest. I'm your co-host, Aris Amatakos, and I'm joined by Nathan once again. Mate, how you going?
Not too bad. First week of the year without Carlton footy. Well, at least within the regular season. A bit of time to relax.
It was good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the lack of stress and the relaxing nature of the weekend. We just got the news. Caleb Marchbank is playing, so just quick thoughts on that before we touch on the rest of the competition.
Look, it's odd. Like you forget how someone plays when they're out for so long, and it's look, what a game for him to come back to as well. I'm more worried about is just getting re-injured again. I think it gives me throwbacks to Charlie Curnow last year when in that first game back, like, every time they jump, every time they do something that's really contested, you're just worried it's going to happen again. And look, I'm just hoping, it's not too forced. It's not happening too soon, but, good on him for getting back to that position when really after that many injuries, you don't see many players recover that well.
Yeah, let's just hope he gets through unscathed, and let's hope he can see the season out and then not have any long-term injuries from here, because that would be not very good. You think one more long-term injury and it'd be very hard to come back from that. But let's move on and let's go to what this video is about and what this series is about. Let's go to the rest of the competition. And the news broke today of some miscellaneous behaviour or some petulant behaviour from a couple of key members of the Melbourne Footy Club team. Stephen May has a club imposed suspension for starting a punch on with Jake Malcolm. Is this? I mean, I had on the run sheet before this had transpired. Is this just a blip in the road? Obviously, they've lost two in a row, but are the wheels falling off for the Demons, or is this just a blip in the road? Just nothing to be worried about, and they'll carry on their business on Monday afternoon.
Look, I think Melbourne have lost one wheel, but simply put them into a mechanic, aka training. They'll get back on track. And this is very reminiscent of what happened last year. Mid-season they were a bit average, not really playing their style very well. And look, I think it's similar. And look, things happened around all football clubs, and we can go back to ours with so did I help it in 2009 or whatever incident that was at the intra club?
Yeah,
things happen.
It was, yeah.
But look, players have social lives, and I think people forget that. But it is a bit odd that it's your own teammate. But I think it's a quick fix.
Yeah, that's what surprised me. Obviously, we don't know what happened, but I just thought he would have got into a fight because, I mean, there's for the lack of a better phrase, there's some dickheads rolling around Melbourne CBD, especially on a Saturday, Sunday night. I thought it'd be one of those scenarios, but with his own teammate, it was surprising. But let's go back to the actual football, and I think something that's been raised, especially in review of their last 2 weeks, is that they are 1-2 against top 8 sides. The only top 8 side they've been is St Kilda. Would it be harsh to say that they're a little bit flat track bullies? They struggle when a team puts the pressure on them when they're under the pump. They do tend to not crumble, but I mean we saw it with the Hawthorn game a couple of weeks back. That was the first time where we saw the D's under semi sort of pressure, and that game was relatively close. Do you see that? Would you agree with that sentiment at any stage?
Look, I think with Melbourne, their most predictable style of football is at the MCG, and all their losses have come at the MCG. And I think teams are starting to work out how to beat them on their home deck. And I think it's hard to say flat track bullies, I guess, when they haven't played a lot of top 8 teams. You play weaker opposition, you adapt to winning quite easily, and then when you move into these top 8 sides, it's a completely different ball game. You're playing teams who are pushing top 4, pushing top 8, the same goal as Melbourne. But I think they prepared really well, especially Fremantle 2 weeks ago. They really exposed Melbourne through the middle, which is the game Melbourne like to play across the G. And Sydney did the same. And even though Melbourne played a bit better for most of that Sydney game. I think Sydney just really outworked them over 4 quarters. And I think if teams can, stay the length of 4 quarters against the D's, I think they're going to be a good chance. And I think Melbourne are struggling to understand that, their home deck is being challenged a little bit.
I do feel I would agree with that to an extent. They are they are a little bit predictable on the MCG, although it does help for the MCG being the deck that you play at the grand final on. I feel like they'll take some solace in that. But I feel like with the Sydney game, especially, something I noticed is that yes, Sydney did come back of a sort. They were down early, but I mean, I think it was 5 straight to 1-5 at one stage in the first quarter. So accuracy really maybe put a different storyline on what that game was. I feel like a lot of talk has been around how well Sydney were able to come back, which they were 4 or 5 goals down in that game, but the scoreline wasn't reflective of the actual game. Um, where do you see? I feel like it's a good time to like. Where do you see their season going from here? I feel like we saw a couple of seasons back. I think it might have been 2019. Geelong had a really good start to the season, and then from the bye they went win loss for the rest of the season. I know we had Melbourne had that blip in the middle of the year last year. Is it one too many times where they can just have a blip and then just recover, or is it just going to be just a normal ebb and flow that the seasons bring up, and they'll be fine for the rest of the season?
Look, I think when you talk about Melbourne and when you look at their opposition, it's quite obvious if they'll beat them quite comprehensively or it will be a close match. And I think more than half their competition is an easy beat for them, and that's why I think even with a blip in the road, I just think there's too many teams that they're much better than, and
Yeah,
they'll dominate. I'll go back to 2019. Oh, it could have been 2020 as well with Richmond, and I think they started 3-4 or something like that, and they were out of the 8 quite early on, and they peaked. They didn't really peak, and I think this was 2020 I'm talking about. They didn't really peak insanely until finals, where they trusted the group to
yeah,
perform against the top sides.
Yeah, they timed their run to perfection.
So I think this Melbourne team has enough trust where even if they are to play poor footy until round 23, and let's just say the next 10 rounds they're 5-5, something like that, I still think in finals they're a threat because they know what they've just accomplished in the last year. They know they can back it up. And the rest of the competition will also fear them. There's nothing, to play a team that's just won a premiership in a final on their home deck, that's still pretty challenging.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree. I feel like it's Melbourne and Richmond are the two sides, in my opinion, where they could finish seventh. They could finish seventh and eighth, and I would still back them as probably the two of the top 3 favourites in finals, just because they're like when their system gets going, you have Richmond with that surge mentality, that a real attacking, like attractive football, and Melbourne with that near on exact opposite, like that real defensive minded restrictive game. I feel like they're the two game styles that hold up in finals very well. So yeah, I would agree. As long as they get there, especially in the top 4, I would back them in finals, no doubt. And another team that let's move from the other end of the spectrum to a team that hasn't played finals in their lifetime, the Gold Coast Suns. And their surprisingly good start to the season, and they're slightly under the radar potential for finals. They have probably one of the easiest run homes in the league. Can you see them sneaking into the 8? I feel like they're one of 4 teams I think that could finish in 8th.
Look, it's actually a slight possibility. And I thought this year for Gold Coast would be a 10th or 11th finish. I thought they were on the right track, and I thought the list they were building has the talent to actually compete. I thought give it 2 or 3 more years. And they're sort of in the position I thought they would be, and what we've, the trends we've noticed is that at home they're a much more dominant team than they are on the road. And I think, a good example, they played us really well in the Gold Coast. And I went to that St Kilda game, and they just seemed like the old Gold Coast that really had no heart and soul, that just seemed to go out there and play 4 quarters for no real reason. Yeah, we look at their run home, and home games to Collingwood, Richmond, Adelaide, Eagles, Geelong. Look, we said before it's 6 wins. You need 12 wins to get eighth at least. So that's 6 more wins for them. It's a tough ask, especially for a team that, they've had a losing culture. They don't know what it takes to get into that top 8. I'm gonna say no, but I think they'll really push it in the last 2 or 3 rounds.
Yeah, I feel like they'll buck the trend that they've been having in the past couple of years, where they fall off towards the back end of the season. I mean, I just want to speak about their forward line for a bit, because I feel like it's probably one of the most exciting forward lines in the comp. You have Roses, Rankin, Joel Jeffrey, Marbiel Chol playing some real attractive football. I mean, we spoke about just before Richmond and Melbourne's game style in finals, having them that forward line, those excitement machines on the big stage. I feel like they would relish it. So should they make the 8, I feel like they'd be one of the more unpredictable teams, and you'd almost rather having a Western Bulldogs finish 8th if you're the team in 5th, because you at least know where you're going to get with the Dogs. Whereas with Gold Coast, they're just going to be a complete unknown. So if they do get there, do you reckon that could work in their favour, or do you think the spotlight and the pressure of finals will be too much for them?
Look, I look back at GWS in 2019 in that prelim where, they had no one there. Let's be honest, it was a Collingwood crowd. Really no expectations, I guess, because you're not expected to beat Collingwood at the MCG in a prelim final, and they did. They got over the line. Gold Coast is a bit of a different story because GWS had finals experience at that time, and you saw the week after they got belted in front of a fully Richmond grand final crowd. So I don't really back them a lot in finals, especially if they're at least heading to Victoria. I think a full MCG just won't suit them quite a lot. And it is a lot of pressure for a lot of young kids as well. They're a very young list still. I think they would give it a red hot crack, but I think they're a sort of team, if they made it to finals, they'd contest till half time, and then home crowd would sort of drive you over the line.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of want to see it. I just want to see that for. I mean, we all knew the ability of Rankin, but I mean, I feel like Carlton gave Malcolm Rose a career. I didn't really, I hadn't heard of him until he kicked 2 and won the game
It
off his
was, it
own
was
boot, pretty
three.
much.
It was
Oh, was
three
it
as
3?
well.
Was
It
it?
was
Oh,
three.
great.
Yeah.
We all know Marbiel Chol, and let's not forget Levi Casbolt has had a fantastic season. It would be funny, wouldn't it, if Gold Coast made the finals with Levi Casbolt, and it would be even funnier if they somehow went further than us. But let's be honest, I probably don't think that will happen. But I feel like we're finally seeing Gold Coast become the team that we all thought they were going to become. Would you? It's taken a while. They've had stop start. We had obviously that mass exodus with Prestia, Amira, Lynch, May. I mean, countless others. We're finally seeing what looks to be a united group, and a group that wants to play for each other. And I feel like you have to give credit to Stuart Dew for that, because I feel like his job was under the spotlight pre-season.
Oh yeah, no, they're definitely a more bonded team, and I think the thing with Queensland is they've got no AFL media up there, and I don't think they have the external pressure that the Vic clubs have. I mean, Stewie Dew's contract goes out of expires at the end of the year, but you haven't heard about it because there's no media up there. They don't have that pressure. And I think that's a good thing for them, and helps you connect a lot more. You're going to trust your game a lot more if you don't have that pressure to win and compete, and which they do, but it's from the Vic media,
Yeah.
and we can't really judge them that much, especially when there's a lot of crappy Vic teams at the same time. So, look, I think they're on the right track, and like I said, I thought this year 2 or 3 more years, and they'll really give it a shot. And I just give them a good crowd, and I think they're already there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a I feel like that's a perfect segue on the crowd numbers to our next talking point, and something that something that was brought up to me just before recording was the GWS versus North Melbourne over the
Yeah,
weekend at Marvel Stadium. There's been fears that it could be a 4-digit crowd. Um, and I mean, let's just keep on the Gold Coast ever so briefly. If they did have the fan base, maybe not of like a Carlton or a Richmond, if they had the fan base of like a North Melbourne or a St Kilda, where they get relatively decent crowds at home games, do you reckon that would give them a slight edge in terms of their ability to make finals?
it definitely would. And look, Gold Coast. The problem with them is they're not really a massively sport populated, community. Like the Titans don't get a lot. They had a soccer team that disappeared.
Yeah,
They're not a sports city. I don't think that
yeah,
sports city is Brisbane, and people will go to Brisbane if they want to watch good teams most of the time. And I think it would help a, quite a bit. And I look, the problem with them is I don't think they can get those crowds unless they have like one of those we need a win to make top 8 games sort of thing where
yeah,
they market it a lot and get community interest. Otherwise, I don't think you can really build a lot unless they
yeah,
make finals. And we can talk about that with the soccer just happened with Western United. It helps. It helps
yeah.
build a fan base, but unfortunately, unless they make finals, I just don't think anything will change.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And let's go back to the crowd in specifically, and like we said, it's the GWS versus North Melbourne Sunday afternoon. It isn't the 4:40 time slot; it is the 3:20 time slot. So I guess there's some solace in that. But is this? I feel like I'm worried about this game. I feel like it could be 4 digits. Would do you see it being any higher than 10K?
I do, and purely because I think there's so much talk about no crowd that people will turn up. That's the vibe I'm getting. I think if this was put with the 3 regular Sunday games, I think it would suffer, especially if you had an MCG game. But I think on its own, public holiday the next day, people will most likely take the piss. And I said to you before that apparently there's people are going to support GWS. Apparently there's a march from the Hungry Jacks at Southern Cross. So if you're around,
Yeah,
go to
head
Hungry
down,
Jacks
head
and
down.
wear orange.
Yeah,
So
you might get a job there as well. But
you,
um,
uh,
yeah, I mean, I almost kind of want to see that. I feel like it'd be good. I mean, I think we saw that we touched on before. The Giants played Collingwood in the preliminary final in 2019. There was quite a few um, one day GWS supporters, I think we should call it, that day. So we might see it again on the weekend. But I think this game is a microcosm of what's been a big overarching topic in the footy media, especially this week. Christian Petrarca has come out and asked the question about fans not rocking up to games. I mean, as Carlton supporters, we can't relate because we get 60K minimum at the G and 40K minimum at Marvel. But yeah, what I think the big question here is COVID still an excuse?
it's an excuse if you have it,
Oh,
but
obviously,
I don't think getting it is more of an excuse anymore because it's like it's out there no matter where you go.
yeah,
Like let's be real, it's such a pressing issue. Like no matter, I'm pretty sure it's like 6 mil plus in Australia. It's everywhere. Like you're gonna get it no matter where you go unless you're really an isolated person. I don't think umpiring's an excuse because I'm sure the people who say umpiring's a problem still watch it on TV without a doubt. So if you're going to
yeah.
watch it on TV, why wouldn't you watch it at the game if you want to go to a game? Look, I just think this league is full of bandwagoners. In all honesty, I think that is seriously the real issue. A lot of supporters are not loyal.
Well, how would you explain the lack of Melbourne crowds? Because it was first verse. I mean, what Sydney was sixth, I believe, but it was practically a top four clash with how well both sides have been going. Sydney obviously have a massive contingent in Melbourne from the South Melbourne connection, and there wasn't. I mean, the crowd wasn't. There was a lot to be left to be desired with that crowd. I mean, we saw it with Richmond. The Richmond Army came out in 2017. I guess you could call them a sleeping giant because they were successful in the past. We've seen it with Carlton, but I mean, feel like Carlton have had a big crowd regardless of how poor or how well we've been going. I don't know. I feel like there's maybe an issue. I mean, people are saying the match day experience has drastically decreased. Would you shed any light on how you feel going to the game in terms of cost and experience and time and all those 9 yards?
Um, Look, MCG I love, but there's a few reasons. I mean, it's just like, as a child, you love that stadium, and travel wise, it's best one. Marvel, I like, but I don't like the upgrades they did, especially the big screens, because the whole point of it was just advertising. Because the actual size of the screen is the exact same size as the old screen. If you
Not a
look at
fan of
it,
the screens.
no, and the
Not,
bright lights that flash,
yeah,
and
I
it
mean,
depends where you're sitting. And I've sat level 1, level 3, and I think level 1 is 10 times worse than sitting on level 3, and
I
it can
refuse to
push
sit.
people away.
I refuse to sit level one in any sporting ground in the world because I wouldn't be able to see the game without having to guess what's happening
Yeah,
100 meters away. But I guess people are saying obviously the lights and the music in between goals. Do you find that annoying? Personally, I really could not care less.
music. Look, I think music is a bit odd for AFL. It's adopted out of the basketball. It's a basketball thing. That's the main one, at least. I guess it's adopting a younger audience that loves that.
Yeah,
I guess the older generation don't see the point in it,
yeah. Well,
but
well,
I can live with it. I can live
yeah.
with it.
Well, I mean, the main uproar has been around like, from what I've seen on like Twitter and stuff. I don't know. Twitter is not a good place if you want rational footballing opinions. Let's put it that way. But there's been a lot about like the music in between goals, the lights, the music at halftime, quarter time. But I feel like I feel like it's something that we just need to accept because it's not the 80s and the 90s where you had just one speaker on every grandstand with just the ground announcer and like it's an experience now. You don't go to just watch the game anymore. It's an experience. I'm not sure if I like that, but I feel like it's what we're going to have to accept, and I feel like it's not going to change. Like, regardless of the uproar, Marvel are not going to, like, the lights are going to stay, the big screen staying, the music in between goals is always going to stay, the music at quarter time and half time is going to stay. I feel like we just got to live with it, like, suck it up and live with it and go to the game and support your team, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I can agree with it. It's something you're going to move on with. And one question I want to ask, and I'm sure most people watching would have seen this on the boards around the ground. When it gets to 5 minutes, you'll see what I think is Kennedy's a sponsorship, 5 minutes remaining. And Tissot used to do that back, and they started in, I think, 2014 or 15, and it stopped for a couple of years. I personally hate it. If you're at the game, I don't want to know how long's remaining. I guess 5 minutes is still a long time, but I don't want to know there's 5 minutes. If I want to know there's 5 minutes, I'd watch it on TV. But what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I feel well, I feel like that's just my I don't know what to call it, but I need to know how long's left. That's why I'm not a fan of the count up clock. I can't I get stressed as it is when Carlton are a goal up with 5 minutes to go and I know there's 5 minutes to go. I can't do it. Like at games when it's like because it only comes up once, I'm pretty sure, when there's
Yeah,
5 minutes left. And we've had some close games. I know the Port one is the one that springs to mind. Actually, no, the Hawthorn one was the one that springs to mind because we're only a point up. So any score for the Hawks and we would have been heartbroken. And I could not deal with that not knowing how long's left. So especially when the ball gets kicked inside or towards our defensive 50, right? I get why people don't. I get why people hate the time that thing around the ground. I know why people want the 5 minute warning back, but yeah, I'm not a fan. But I can understand why people would be a fan of the count up clock being the main source.
Well, do you think it can affect the actual play? Because I guess you can say that, the interchange bench hold up those cards, but they're less likely to look at that, especially if you're on the outer side. You're less likely to look across. Whereas that board, you can read it from anywhere around the ground. Can that affect the way games are closed out?
Um, I don't think so. I feel. I mean, it obviously would have an effect. No, like everything would have an effect. You could literally do anything to mess around with the stadium graphics or whatever and have at least a slight effect on the game. I just feel like if it was like a minute left, I feel like it would have a bigger effect. But because 5 minutes left, there's still time. Like even if you cop a goal, you can wrestle it back even with 5 minutes left, right? Um, and also the boards do go down to two, then one. I've seen some 30 seconds as well, which I don't see the point in that. And I also think the word gets around through runners and through players coming like on and off and stuff. Yeah, I think it would have an effect, but not a massive effect for it to be a problem. To put it that way.
In terms of the crowd numbers that have probably surprised you the most, who would you roll with?
Melbourne, 100%. I don't get it. I seriously don't get it. If Carlton won the flag, I would go to every single game for the next season, home and away, in China or in Auckland or in Perth or in Brisbane, wherever I'm going. I I don't understand it, and I think it shocked me the season opener, seeing I think it was 40K something like that with a grand final rematch. Your team just won the flag. The first game in Melbourne after your team's won a flag. That surprised me, and I thought there'd be an upward trend, but I don't think there has been. Like,
I was
that surprised me.
I was at that season opener, and it was 57K, which, like over half the stadium you can live with.
I think we got
I
more
don't,
the night after, but
we got 72, mate. It was smacked them. But
yeah,
what I saw is Melbourne fans are a bit different. They're a lot quieter. They're not
they're
as
posh.
aggressive. Yeah, they're
They're
not as
posh.
aggressive, and I don't think they could care less whether their football team wins and loses, because they've seen so many losses that they accepted losing, and they've seen a grand final win, so they'll probably live with it. I don't know.
Yeah, true.
I think what we saw the most that will turn up for them, and that wasn't even, that was, I think it was 60-40 Melbourne Dogs split. I don't know what the 60% of that is, but I'm going to say I'd say about 35-40K. That's the
Yeah,
max I think they could possibly get. So I look at 32 on the weekend, and it doesn't surprise me a lot,
yeah.
because cold Saturday night, then they're just, I don't know, I just don't think they're as aggressive and willing to come to the football.
It doesn't help that they play all the games at the G, and I know I understand why they do, but it doesn't help considering that if say they were in North Melbourne or maybe not in North Melbourne. Actually, I think North Melbourne's a perfect example. Say they were in North Melbourne and they played most of their games at Marvel, getting 30-40K at Marvel, not a bad result, not a bad turnout. But getting it at the G isn't great, and I'm worried for finals because I don't see it. I mean, if it's a Carlton, if it's I mean, let's just assume Melbourne finish first. Say it's a Carlton Melbourne, Carlton St Kilda, Carlton Geelong Grand qualifying final, sorry, at the MCG, and it's a Melbourne home game. They'll be outnumbered probably 70 to. I mean, if it's Carlton, they'll be outnumbered 70-30. If it's St Kilda, I reckon it'd be about the same. And Geelong fans aren't in the shadows by any means. So I'm just worried about that. I feel like that could reflect very poorly on them as a club if that happens.
Oh, look, all the Melbourne fans, they're in two sections. They're either club members or they're MCC, and that's only where you'll find them. And if you jump to MCG, you'll see just sections are bulked, and then the rest is bare. And I think
Yeah,
think if you spread them around, it wouldn't actually look as bad. But because they're all bulked in one section, and at the MCG, it's that sort of win area on the non-camera side you'll see, and MCC's on the camera side, which you can't see. So they're just not a big supported club, and I think people are struggling to realize that they're just not a big supported club. And they never have been. So it's like you can't expect imaginary fans to start turning up in a sense.
Yeah, it is kind of. It's kind of a shock to the system considering you've had. You had Richmond. Let's look, the Melbourne teams that have won flags in the last like couple of decades, or like maybe 2 decades. You had Collingwood in 2010. We obviously know how big they are. Geelong, we know how big they are, and you have the Western Bulldogs, who pretty much the entire west of Melbourne would go for them, right? So they had big turnouts. Melbourne, considering that they don't really have an identity, like they're not like a Geelong, which is Geelong fans. They're not like um, they're not like a Western Bulldogs to west of Melbourne. You're not like the Carlton, which is probably the WOG community would feel 90% of the fan base, and even Collingwood to an extent as well. I feel like that's coming to the fore now, and it's especially coming to the fore now considering you don't need to go to games anymore. In the 80s and the 90s, maybe 90s to a lesser extent, but in the 70s and 80s, you needed to go to the games unless you wanted to listen to it on radio. Now, mate, all you need is a KO subscription and you're all set. So I feel like the more we get, the more accessibility we are getting to watching games, the golf in fan like the golf in attendance is going to start getting drastic, I think.
I agree, and the thing is, unless you've got a free to wear game, if you've got a paid subscription game and you don't have that subscription, that's really the only way to entice fans to come.
Yeah.
In a sense, otherwise your loyals will turn up each week, and if you've got a subscription, really you're set, aren't you? And I think that's the generation we live in, and when we start to when AFL media start to accept that players, we have big stadiums, it's hard to fill them at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, let's just assume Melbourne make the grand final, and I feel like we're ragging on Melbourne, but the attendance overall this season, barring maybe Carlton and a couple of other clubs, hasn't been that great. I think Melbourne's just been the example, considering they're the reigning champs and their crowds have been below par. But let's just assume Melbourne make the grand final, and let's assume it's a Fremantle that join them. Are you worried at any stage that it could be a slightly underwhelming grand final attendance, or do you think that it's a grand final? Anyone and anyone's going to want to get a ticket.
Oh no, it will be full. I mean, you look at Perth. Do you seriously think there were 60,000 Melbourne and Bulldog supporters in Perth? I wouldn't think so.
I feel like that's a slightly different, because like Perth's like,
I
feel like
that's
semi Brisbane. Like the first and last time probably they're ever going to get a grand final.
I just think it's too many corporate tickets given out that they will make sure it's sold out.
Yeah, I feel like the prelim would be a better indicator.
Yeah, that would
if
be
it's a Melbourne Freo prelim, that could be underwhelming, I think.
Well, look, I think in the 2018 elimination, the Melbourne Geelong one, I think there was only around 70k there, which is still quite a lot, but that's with a good, that's a lot of Geelong. That's the closest they've had in terms of a final that hasn't had a massive Vic team. They've not against a massive Vic team.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Apart from the big 4 Vic teams, Perth just jump onto whoever's winning and
just kill off the entire WA fan base. Nice. Apart from us, Collingwood are getting decent crowds. Essendon are rubbish and they're still getting half decent crowds. Richmond are always going to show up. Hawthorn fans are showing up. We saw some Sunday afternoon, Hawthorn Collingwood. Arguably the worst conditions you could possibly want to go and watch a game of footy, especially at the G, where it's -4 degrees and raining and windy. Still a pretty decent crowd. I'm not exactly sure what the numbers were, but I was watching it. It was loud and it looked to be good. Yeah, it seems like the AFL are really wanting teams like Carlton and Collingwood to just start winning a little bit more, so the showpiece games can be adequately represented in the crowd.
Look, us being good helps. Us definitely
Oh
being good
yes, we
helps.
we are carrying the competition. Let's be honest.
But look, I just don't think it's an issue that will be resolved like
Yeah,
anytime
yeah,
soon.
yeah, yeah. You can't. I mean, like I said, we're only going to start. It's only going to games are only going to start being more accessible to more people. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a natural decline in crowd numbers unless something drastic happens, which I don't think will happen. I mean, I think the prime like maybe time period was probably early 2010s where KO didn't exist, so you needed a Foxtel box, but also so like that would be the best balance in terms of accessibility to fans because you can get a Foxtel box, but it's not like anyone can get KO, right? Not anyone can get Foxtel. So that found that perfect balance between accessibility and giving fans incentives to go to games. Just something that's come into my head quickly. In the Premier League, they have something called a lockout, which all 12 o'clock kickoff games on a Saturday afternoon in the Premier League, only one of them is a broadcast live on free to air television or their equivalent to. This is to help attendance maintain like a decent level. Could this be a thing, or will it be completely rejected by the Australian public?
Oh, I would be 100% rejected. I mean, it's a completely different type of,
Yeah, yeah,
because it's like it's more city based, and you grow up in that city, you support that team, and I don't
yeah,
think it's the same. Whereas someone in Craigieburn can support St Kilda, like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's not that connection in a sense. So no, and money, as if
Yes, of course. Yeah, of
not a
course.
chance. Could be an
I
interesting
would.
concept.
I mean, it would be the announcement to that would be very, very dividing, wouldn't it? Although,
Oh,
although I would like to see it just for the reaction. I feel like I love the Schadenfreude of it all. I love seeing people upset. Be great fun.
you never know. Well, I think two Friday night games was a very minimal example of that happening, in a sense,
Yes, yes,
a little bit.
I agree. I agree. Let's just hope that we see the back of two Friday night games for the rest of this. Actually, no, I think there's one coming up pretty soon, isn't there? Two Friday
I
night
reckon
games.
there is, yeah, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
hate it, hate it with a visceral passion. I don't hate a lot of things, but I'm very traditionalist with fixtures. I said this to you before we started recording. Friday to Sunday, one game on a Friday, three games on a Sunday, and then that'd be five games on a Saturday. Just keep it like that. It worked perfectly. Just leave it. Forget your Thursday nights. You can keep your Anzac Day and your Anzac Day Eve and your Queen's birthday. Keep all those traditions and keep the Thursday night for the opening game of the season if you want. But that's my quick rant on the fixtures.
Yeah, look, Thursday night, it's okay if you're like really missing footy, but
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't know.
actually like footy that much, so so I
That's
just
it.
I just want Friday to Sunday.
No,
Um,
I agree.
no, yeah, no. I reckon we're gonna get into a stage where there's gonna be footy on more days than there isn't. To be honest, I feel like we could get to a stage where it's Thursday and Monday. Would you agree?
Oh, look, yeah, that's not a bad call, but I feel like it's one of those things where it would be very hard to see clubs and player associations agreeing to that, especially just, you know,
Yeah,
the possibility you basically guaranteed only a 6 day break no matter what day you play. I think
yeah.
not always, but I feel like
More often than not,
just
yeah,
limits recovery.
yeah.
But honestly,
I
what we've seen, you never know.
You never know, mate. Like new CEO, Gill's gone. Next person will come in and change it all up. We could see footy every single day, like 2020. Did you like that, by the way? Just quickly, footy every day in 2020. Yes, no.
Who liked 2020 at all?
Yeah,
It didn't
let's
feel
just
like
yeah
it didn't feel like footy. It just felt like a joke at a point, especially I guess from our perspective when your team's playing for basically nothing the whole season.
yeah
Oh yeah, nah. Because
mate
if
yeah
there were crowds, maybe like decent crowds, but there was no crowds.
yeah
It's
yeah.
like playing a
I mean
practice match.
yeah legit. It was playing Carlton North Melbourne at the Gabba. That
It's
was
great. It's a terrific
crazy
game.
crazy times. Let's forget about 2020 and let's talk about 2022 and let's talk very, very quickly about the season that has been 2022. Is this one of the most exciting seasons we've had in a long time? Because, like we mentioned before, there's about four teams that could feel. I think I should preface this by saying the top seven is all but locked in my opinion, just with places interchanging within each other. However, there's about four teams that could eye up that eighth place spot, and there's four teams that on their day play some unbelievable football.
Yeah, no, I agree. Top seven seems, I wouldn't say set because Carlton's in there, so I'm just going to say hopefully set. Uh,
Fair enough.
it's hard to like remember exciting seasons when your team is so bad for a long time because you just tend to not care about what's going on in the rest of the competition. But I
Yeah,
think, no, look, I think this season it's turning out to be close, but I think it's hard to look past Melbourne unless they're doing bad because this is they're two losses in a row. You start to think, oh, are they in trouble? And maybe they are, but I'm going to assume that they're going to come back and we're going to completely forget this happened. And then we'll be like,
yeah,
oh, Melbourne are going to win it easy. I feel like there hasn't been a year in a long time where we've not known who's the most likely to win a premiership or at least make the grand final in a sense.
yes, yeah. I would agree. Yeah, I would agree because I mean, you had what 20. I mean, 2016. It was. I feel like the Swans were the favourites,
Yeah.
which they made the grand final. 2017, the Crows. 18. I mean, 18. You could say the shock with no Richmond, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think people had West Coast competing, and then 1920. We all know the Tigers. 21. Yeah, the Days. So yes, I would agree that we're getting into a stage where I feel like everyone wants Melbourne to just slip up ever so slightly,
Yeah.
just to make it more